Hi, this is John Block from Mr. Block Tutors Math, and today we're going to look at the remainder theorem and the factor theorem, and we're going to use those two theorems to work with polynomials. So the remainder theorem says when you divide a polynomial like f of x by x minus h, then the remainder is f of x. Well, let's take an example of that. So suppose you had this polynomial, x cubed minus 3x squared minus 2x plus 6, and you divided that by x minus 2. Or let's write it this way. Let's do long division. Now, why don't you pause and write that out and you try it along with me. X cubed minus 3x squared minus 2x plus 6 divided by x minus 2. So I go over here two terms, and I say, what do I put here so that this will match? Well, x cubed squared times x is x cubed minus 2x squared. Subtract that, which makes that minus, makes that plus. And then I have negative 1x squared. Bring down my negative 2x. So I'll have to match this. So I'll put negative x. So I get negative x squared plus 2x. That changes to positive. That changes to negative. So those are gone. And I get negative 4x. Bring down the 6 plus 6. So minus 4, negative 4x plus 8. Subtract that, changes that to positive, changes that to negative, and I get negative 2. So my remainder is negative 2. There's my remainder. Now, according to the theorem, the remainder theorem says when you divide a polynomial, that should be an A, when you divide a polynomial f of x by x minus h, the remainder is f of h. Now notice this is minus h, this is positive h here. So let's do that. Let's take f of 2 and plug it in here. And so I'm going to get 2 cubed, see there's 2 cubed, minus 3 times 2 squared minus 2 times 2 plus 6. And I get 8 minus 12 minus 4 plus 6. 8 minus 12 is negative 4, and negative 4 is negative 8, plus 6 is negative 2. Now, notice, I hope you notice that this is somewhat easier and quicker than doing the long division route. Now, let's look next at the factor theorem and see what it says. The factor theorem. See what it says. Now the factor theorem says that if f of h is 0, then x minus h is a factor of f of x, which just makes sense because if x minus h is dividing into f of x, and it divides in there evenly, and then my remainder will be 0. So then by the remainder theorem, if the remainder is f of h and f of h equals 0, then x minus h must be a factor of f of x. Now, let's take an example of this. So the question is x minus 2 a factor of x cubed plus 3x squared minus 2x minus 16? Well, according to the factor theorem, if I go f of 2, and if that's 0, then x minus 2 is a factor of that polynomial. So 2 cubed plus 3 times 2 squared minus 2 times 2 minus 16, and I get 8 plus 12 minus 4 minus 16. There's 20, there's 20. Subtract them and I get 0. So therefore, x minus 2 is a factor of f of x. Now let's review a little bit. First of all, what does it mean that x minus 2 is a factor? Or what does it mean that 2 is a root? Well, basically, in a drawing sense, what we've got here is we've got a cubic. This polynomial right here is a cubic because of the 3 right there. It's a third degree. And third degrees generally go something like this. They make that S curve. And what it's saying is that 2 is a root. So 2 is a place where if x minus 2 is a factor, then 2 is a root. And a root is where the graph crosses the x-axis. Now, it could have been sort of different. Like, for instance, maybe it's coming up like this, and our 2 is right here. Maybe it's coming up like this, and our 2 is right here. We don't know exactly what the shape is, but we do know that 2 is a root, so 2 is a factor. Okay, and let's go back to our question, and let's see if we can figure this out. So using my factor theorem, oh, we already did that, and we come up with f of 2 equals 8 plus 12 minus 4 minus 16, which is, 16, which is 0. Now, let's use a different problem, a lot harder problem, and we'll use our factor and our... Now, the factor theorem tells us that if f of h equals 0, then x minus h is a factor of f of x. Well, if x equals 2 is a root, then x minus 2 is a factor of this guy. And if this is a factor, then f of 2 must equal 0. So I'll take and fill in the 2 into the x spots. And that should be 0 according to the factor theorem. So I've got 24 minus 4 minus 4t plus 4 equals 0. Negative 4 plus 4 is out. So I got 24 minus 4t. So 24 equals 4t. So t equals 6. We just found out t by using the factor theorem. And the remainder theorem, I guess, kind of on our check. We can check this. So then our polynomial is 3x cubed minus x squared minus 12x plus 4 at x equals 2. Then we get 2 cubed is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. 2 to the 4th is 4 minus 24 plus 4 equals 0. There's our check. Well, thanks for listening. And if you need math help, you can reach me at www.mrblocktutorsmath.com. and we can work on skills, or we can work on homework, or we can work on other things that you want to work on that have to do with math. Glad to see you, and keep coming back. Thank you. We'll see you.